Folks, thousands of people across America protested this weekend after President Donald Trump signed an executive order banning refugees from 7 largely Muslim countries. Folks, it was a chaotic scene from Los Angeles to D.C. to Chicago to Boston, you name it, as people took to the streets, packing airports, protesting this ban that he says is not a Muslim ban, but the reality is that is exactly what it is and exactly what he called for. And of course, when you look at what is taking place, this backlash, folks, has been absolutely tremendous. The nations impacted include Sudan, Somalia, Libya, Iran, Iraq, Yemen, and Syria. Passport holders cannot travel to the U.S. for 3 months, while refugees fleeing Syria are indefinitely banned. Folks, the backlash against the order was swift. On late Saturday, 2 judges issued an emergency stay against Trump's order, temporarily allowing people who arrived here with a valid visa to remain. It also protects refugees from being deported back to their home countries. The White House says it's a small price to pay for American security.
So it wasn't chaos. I mean, the fact of the matter is 325,000 people from foreign countries came into the United States yesterday, and 109 people were detained for further questioning. Most of those people were moved out. We've got a couple dozen more that remain, and I would suspect, as long as they're not awful people, that they will move through before another half a day today. And perhaps some of these people should be detained further, and if they're folks that shouldn't be in this country, they're going to be detained. And so apologize for nothing here.
Well, but actually it was chaotic as we saw lawyers literally flooding airports, sitting on the floor, some having to buy tickets just to gain admittance to airports, doing their best to help folks who are stranded, many of them who are elderly, who are also sick. The American Civil Liberties Union, as well as various Democrats, say this is unconstitutional and they're going to fight it tooth and nail. All right, then. So, folks, we don't have that soundbite. Now, Senator Chuck Schumer out of New York, he stood with some refugees in New York decrying this particular executive order. And again, it has led to all sorts of chaos. Now, what is stunning, according to the New York Times and others, and that is the Department of Homeland Security wasn't even aware of this executive order before it was signed. They literally were on a conference call as General Kelly, the head of the Department of Human Services, was flying back from Florida. They were on a conference call to get details when someone said, oh my God, they're on television signing the exact executive order we're talking about on this call. So although the Trump administration said everything ran smoothly, that is simply a flat-out lie. That is not the case. Let's break it down right now with our panel. Lauren Victoria Burke, NBC Black, Politics365.com. Also, Kristen Clark with the Lawyers Committee there as well. Eugene Craig, of course, Republican strategist. Kristen, I want to start with you. Utterly stunning when you look at what happened this weekend and how brain dead is Reince Priebus, the chief of staff, and others, to suggest that things ran smoothly this weekend?
Oh, everything that we saw this weekend makes clear that that's not the case. First of all, it does not appear that the federal government abided by its own rulemaking procedures when it put out the executive order. There is very little guidance to help aid the public, to aid Border Patrol officials working at airports into how this order was to be implemented. And so what we saw this weekend was pure chaos, complete lack of clarity about how this impacts people who were in transit, how it impacted people who literally were on the ground at the time the order was announced. We saw lawyers out at airports setting up clinical shops to interact with people who were impacted by the executive order. I spent the entire weekend on the phone with lawyers strategizing. 5 courts now have issued orders of some kind against the executive order. About 3 judges have issued orders that say that people cannot be removed One judge has issued an order saying that people can come in. I expect that in the weeks ahead we will see more and more legal challenges, and the courts will prove to be a really critical place to put a check on this president's unlawful actions.
Eugene, Craig, I saw Sean Spicer, White House press secretary, over the weekend on one of the Sunday morning shows that he said that, well, one of the reasons why they gave no heads up to the various individuals is because they did not want people to try to somehow slide in as they were trying to get it all sorted. But to have the Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security not be aware of this executive order, well, they were actually on a conference call as he was flying back getting the details. DHS over the weekend clueless what's going on. Then when the judge order comes down, you had some border security folks who were ignoring the order. You even had Congressman Bobby Scott, hopefully we have that video of him at Dulles talking to a security guard, a police officer who would not let a member of Congress talk to folks with border security. I don't care what they're talking about. This was chaos.
Absolute chaos. This is the Steve Bannon amateur hour. Look, I come from just an admonishment in the Republican Party. You know, there are going to be some places where I agree with the Trump administration. There will be some places where I disagree with the Trump administration. This is one of those places. This executive order is absolutely unconstitutional. It's a violation of rights of folk that are legal residents, folk that hold green cards, even some folk that are American citizens that are flying back in. You know, and it's just sad. But this is the Steve Bannon amateur hour on display.
Lauren, to sit here and say on one hand, if you held a green card, you were being detained. Now all of a sudden they said, well, there was no problem. Then they said, well, we're actually going to go back. And now, well, we're not quite sure. Who knows what in the world Steve Bannon and Steve Miller is doing in the White House? I mean, to have Steve Bannon literally overrule lawyers with the Department of Homeland Security, I mean, this is this is just chaos. It's a mess, and it shows that this administration is not even remotely ready for prime time.
Well, when you're running an administration on ideology and not specific policy, this is what you get. When you have a president that doesn't know anything about how to run the federal government, and his son-in-law who knows nothing about running the federal government, and his friends who are bloggers like Steve Bannon and Stephen Miller, this is the result you get. As somebody who's worked in the federal government for 4 years, there's a reason there's a sign-off process. There's a sign-off process in congressional offices of only 18 people, where you have 2 or 3 people look at something. In this case, obviously the Department of Homeland Security should have looked at it, the Justice Department should have looked at it, and the White House counsel should have looked at it. We're finding that nobody looked at it. We're finding that members of Congress, obviously with jurisdiction on this matter, knew nothing about this until it came out on CNN. So, I mean, you know, the idea that this White House is somehow running, a normal functioning government is ridiculous. It should be of no surprise to anybody. This is what Donald Trump talked about. He talked about a Muslim ban during the campaign. They were stupid enough to put it on their website. They were stupid enough to have Rudy Giuliani be part of the process, and then he announces that that's exactly what they wanted to do on Fox. I mean, so they're not even smart within being stupid. So it's not surprising. We're going to have more to come this week, unfortunately. And the bigger question, I think, is what is the opposition going to do about it?
Christian, speaking of that opposition, we're seeing thousands of people turn out, putting all kinds of pressure on the administration. This is the second consecutive weekend. It's stunning that for us to say that Trump has only been in the White House about 10 days, and they've already managed to tick off women, tick off folks who are in support of various refugees. And I think what is more shameful and despicable from this administration is to see individuals who put their lives on the line to assist the U.S. military who are being held up and denied entry into this country. In fact, one person had to be placed on a plane, flown back to Iran, was kicking and screaming. Now a judge has ruled that person should be able to come back to the United States. And so I don't understand how this administration can somehow explain that, well, everything just went wonderfully and smoothly, when what we're seeing are absolute denials of people who have the right to come to this country. And what's even more so amazing, Christian, is that of the 7 countries they cited, there has not been a single refugee who has attacked the United States. Kellyanne Conway goes on television talking about the San Bernardino shooting. They were from Pakistan. They're not on the list. The 9/11 hijackers, most of them from Saudi Arabia, that country's not on the list. What the hell is going on?
That's right. I mean, it's incredibly irrational how this thing was put together. And it's not just the process, that there was no process that went into putting this thing together. It is just as you say, that of the 7 nations identified, no one from any of those countries has committed an act of terrorism on American soil since 1975. Completely irrational. I think that we're going to continue to see the protests whenever the federal government does something that tramples on the rights of Americans. This executive order goes against everything that we stand for as a nation. We are a nation of immigrants. We embrace people who have been pushed out and are vulnerable, who come here from other countries in search of opportunity. It will take years to undo the damage that was caused from this moment. And I'll note this. This weekend, a mosque went up in flames in Texas. Last night, there were at least five people killed at a mosque in Quebec City. I mean, we've unleashed a storm of terror around the country. It will take a long time to kind of pull back and undo the damage created by this moment.
Eugene, to sit here and watch this, it is stunning when you look at that mosque going up in Austin, Texas. Now you have the shooting in Quebec as well, at a mosque there as well. And then you people say, well, you know, Trump said he was going to do this, which is absolutely true. But to see the level of chaos and to see border security ignore a federal judge, and some reports say the White House, they told them to ignore a federal judge.
You know, those officers, those border security folk that ignored the federal orders from the judges should be fired. You know, we have 3 co-equal branches of government. And, you know, it's set up like that for a reason, for situations just like this. You know, I was a person that called out the Obama administration for out-of-control executive orders and out-of-control actions. And, you know, this is a prime example of the same thing that happened under President Obama. You know, it's an out-of-control executive order. You know, Christian's right. The damage that was done from this weekend is going to take literally years to repair. I mean, you know, part of fighting the war on terror is not creating new terrorists with propaganda from our own actions. I mean, you know, this is, it's sad. It's absolutely sad.
And there's absolutely no indication that this White House is going to learn from a mistake and change what they're doing. There's this attitude of, you know, we know everything about everything, we're going to continue what we're doing. So I have a feeling that it'll get worse before it gets better. When we see members of Congress, I mean, Don Beyer, Bobby Scott, Jerry Connolly at Dulles Airport, and a constitutional lawyer, Jamie Raskin, say that this is a constitutional crisis, that in fact they got a no answer from border security at the airport. They got really no answer. And of course, there's also this issue too of people not being able to get to an attorney who were at the airport. That's a serious matter. So you know, we have a government right now run by, you know, 5 idiots at the White House standing in the Oval Office. That's what this is. They're not even smart enough to pick up the phone and call a member of Congress that's on their side to give them some advice. They're not even smart enough for that.
Kickstart your day at 7 and get the news you need from the perspective you want. NewsOne Now with Roland Martin, every weekday morning at 7 on TV1.